Hey everybody, I'm Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you're listening to the Fuzz Life podcast. In this episode, I got to sit down with Jimmy Singleton, who's a very talented tattoo artist. I got to ask him about what inspired him to do what he does today, and talk a bit about his backstory of how he got into tattooing, what his apprenticeship was like, for example, and then fast forward to today, what he's up to and what keeps him passionate about what he does. So I think you're really going to like this episode, even though it's a bit different than the usual topic for the Fuzz Life podcast. What you, the listener, I think can get out of this is I find it really interesting and inspiring to listen to people's stories who followed something they were passionate about and how that became their career. So that's something to keep in mind while we're talking to Jimmy today. Maybe you're wondering about getting into a similar profession, so this might be really interesting to you. So before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone listening know that while you're listening to this podcast, you can hop on Instagram and check out Jimmy Singleton's work at JimmyTron71. That's JimmyTron 71. JimmyTron71. So while you are listening to his interview, maybe you can check out some of his artwork, some of his tattoos, and kind of see what Jimmy's all about. Be sure if you're on his page to leave a comment or something and let him know that you were listening to the podcast and maybe something that was talked about that resonated with you. So without too much more introduction, let's get started talking to Jimmy Singleton. Jimmy, thanks for taking the time to sit down and chat with us on the Fuzz Life podcast.
Glad to be here.
So you've been tattooing since 1995, and I was wondering if you could give folks a background on how you got into tattooing, kind of like what your apprenticeship was like, because for a lot of us outside the tattoo world, I think it's like a big, mysterious thing.
That's the way it was kept for many years for a lot of people, or for generations. I was offered an apprenticeship in, I'd say probably roughly around 87, 88 from Jim Hawk, but I was already signed up for the Navy and the delayed entry program, so I wasn't able to do the apprenticeship until 1995 when I got out of the service. And it was a whole different thing than it is nowadays, where it was a year, I didn't even touch a tattoo machine for a full year. I learned how to solder needles, just being around the place, observing, learning history, and just reading books, and and we also had it as a little bit different from a lot of places where I didn't draw flash. I didn't learn, like my boss always drew everything freehand. So
okay, cool.
So he's like, well, if you can draw on skin on paper, you can draw on skin. So it was kind of a different kind of thing in that respect as well. So
this is a full year. You're at the shop like 30 or 40 hours a week, full time.
I was also working at a camera store at the time.
Okay,
right. And then I was failing out of community college as well. So I was doing all this stuff, a lot of plates spinning, a lot of things happening. So, but I had to drop out of community college, work at the camera store a little bit more, and then work at the tattoo shop at nights. And Hawk didn't get into the tattoo shop until 3 o'clock till midnight or 1 or whatever, whenever he leaves.
Okay, cool.
And so getting out of the camera shop at 6 o'clock, going straight to the tattoo shop, hanging out there all night, observing Hawk, Bex, and then later Ed Young. And then just absorbing the culture and just being around, learning how to deal with the counter situation, how to talk to clients. And until he thought I was ready, and then he sat me down and learned how to make a stencil of medieval lamb on his wrist.
Okay, cool.
And he just walked me through this tattoo that took way too long to do.
So your first tattoo was on Jim?
Yes. Yeah, on his wrist.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like that's a very standard apprenticeship practice anymore.
I don't know if it is or not. Yeah, some people may. Like, a lot of times, most people seem to, like, practice on their own thighs.
Yeah, I've heard people tattooing themselves. Or
like a orange or a potato or pigskin or some weird stuff like that. And we always talked about that. But then he's like, screw it. We're just going to just tattoo me.
So how was that? I bet you're pretty nervous.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like, single needle outline, 7-round shader. So it's like a super fine line and super small shading grouping. So it's just getting over the nervousness of making every squiggly line that I could, and then trying to fix it with the shading and make it look better.
Yeah.
And then
while the person you're studying under is watching your every move.
And he was like extremely patient, extremely giving. Just like, yeah, there you go. It's like, okay, see what you did there. See what there. He was extremely patient. And and then the second tattoo I did was on him as well, on his arm of a tombstone with a motorcycle wheel and wings.
Nice.
With some lettering,
nice.
Memory Brothers, Sisters Lost. And so he had me draw that one on freehand. And so my first freehand tattoo was on him. And equally terrifying, and just trying not to, shit myself while I'm trying to
I bet.
tattoo my mentor. So
yeah, but that's really intimidating.
Very much so. Here's a guy that's been doing this for a long time and has his own shop and his own business for a long time, and he just offers me this thing, and now he's trusting me to tattoo him forever. So yeah, a little bit intimidating.
So you must have been really interested in art growing up as a kid. I was kind of wanting to know some of your inspirations of like how you went from like a young person getting into like art and drawing and stuff, and what made you want to get into tattooing, or maybe other ideas that you had as far as pursuits of your artwork.
So tattooing was a million miles away. I had no interest.
Okay.
It was not in my worldview whatsoever. I was a comic book nerd. I was just obsessed with X-Men. I would just seek out specific artists that would jump out at me. So there's the John Byrne, George Perez, later Bill Sienkiewicz, Art Adams, all these comic book artists that represented the human form and drama and proportions and stuff that just blew my mind. Like, okay, I want to do this. I just loved it. And I appreciate other artwork. Growing up in the early 70s, there's still a little bit of the hippie fallout of, like, you see Alphonse Mucha kind of Art Nouveau.
I love those, like, kind of the 70s.
Stuff that's inspired a lot of, like, stoner art,
Right,
even, like, the lettering that you use is kind of nouveau-ish.
It's definitely... It's like it was the typeset font that I could find available that was as close to Alphonse Mucha as I could find.
Sure.
So, yeah, you see right through it.
Well, yeah, I've been at this. I observe things. I try to break down the source material. Where does it come from?
That's really cool.
Almost like an archaeologist, I suppose.
Yeah.
So when I see a comic book artist, I can tell, like, Jim Lee is slightly inspired by John Byrne, and John Byrne, maybe, of course, everyone goes back to Jack Kirby and all the old school guys. But so it's like, so I see that with music and art and tattoos, and everything comes from somewhere. And so I just love that, just like kind of scraping away at the surface, like, oh, that eye comes from this artist, and this comes from that artist, and oh, this obviously comes from this woodblock print, and so. When I can, like, it's kind of neat to be able to find out, like, to kind of see those influences, and I'm not mad at that kind of stuff. I love seeing all the stuff that can mash together to create something, create a unique new thing out of just separate, different little things.
That's something we were talking about before, that I think sometimes people get, whether it's art, music, poetry, guitar pedals, or whatever, people get kind of stunted trying to feel like they have to do something brand new that no one's ever seen before. And sometimes just like taking pieces of these different things you're inspired by and you like and putting them together is like the really cool skill. So I heard someone say that a good artist is only as good as their reference material. Yeah,
very much so. And I'm brain farting on the quote, but something about, like, all artists steal, just a good artist don't get caught or something. But But I think we have this illusion of being unique, one of a kind. People, like, I've got the singular voice that's so inspiring, and that nobody else has had this thought, this idea, or has done this thing before. But I think that's kind of ludicrous, being that we all get inspired by something, whether it's hearing a turn of phrase, seeing some birds fluttering around, or, whatever gives you an idea to put that onto canvas or skin or music or whatever. It all comes from somewhere. And we're all just made up of all the things that we've read and heard and, people that have influenced us. And I don't know, I think it's like how people get upset when there's a new remake of a movie.
Yeah.
Or a cover tune, because the other one was so much better. Oh, what do we need another one? And sometimes it's a generational thing, but then you'll hear like a certain song and the way someone else presents it. Like I just watched a YouTube video of Chris Cornell doing Nothing Compares to You and knocked my socks off, It's just like, okay, I didn't know I needed that, but that was amazing. And so, I love the Sinead O'Connor, I love the Prince version, but the Chris Cornell, it adds something new and doesn't take anything away. And I think that's what, for me, with a recreation, a reproduction, does it add something and not take away?
That's a really good way to sum it up. Because when you're talking about this stuff, I'm thinking of, even though the tattoo world and the music world are quite a bit different, but it really seem to intersect. I'm thinking of all these people that are maybe like struggling to write a song, or they're working on a new pedal, or even someone trying to get into art, or like they're working on tattoos right now or something, about how folks like you keep coming out with new material, even though you've been doing this for 25 years, every day doing art and tattoos. So I'm kind of wondering what keeps you inspired, or like keeps you to where you're able to like see this like classic reference stuff and still be inspired to make it your own every day.
Yeah, I felt like an oddball in tattooing, where I rarely come up with unique ideas for myself. It's hard to come up with what do I want to get tattooed on myself. It's usually by what artist. Okay, I like their drawing style, so I'm going to come up with an idea that works with their drawing style. And so for me, most of my inspiration comes from my client. What do they want? I serve my client. And so they have an idea. I try to draw in that style that they bring. And then if it's possible, I try to develop a conversation, a relationship where I try to figure out what they want to get, what's in their head, what's in the ether, not the words they say, but in the pictures that they show, but what do they mean? So sometimes it could be simple as like a one-line drawing of pinkies interlocking. Okay, you're not going to improve upon that too much. So that is what it is. But then sometimes someone has more of an abstract thought, and like a couple days ago, a young lady wanted a purple lightsaber on her arm, and so she wanted the Mace Windu from Star Wars, and she's like looking at this little simple line drawing, and she's like, well, you could just do it like this with the purple lightsaber. I was like, okay, is that what you want, or is that what you just think that'll be easier for me?
Right.
I want to do what you want. So that's what I try to shoot for personally, and try to make their ideas as good, if not better, than possible, than what they imagined, hopefully. So I try to invest in my clients and make them stoked about what they're going to wear forever. But with tattooing in general, so much of the imagery, the classic imagery, is folk art that's been passed down for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the cover tunes, and how many bands have covered Louie Louie, and so there's so many people that have done The Rose of No Man's Land, or Pharaoh's Horses, or whatever else, so there's all these classic ideas, and whether or not people can do it a tribute to the original way it was drawn, or if they do their own twist on it,
right?
And so we have a visual library to draw from, and it's familiar, and it's when people see it, like, oh, it's the Sundancer, the Burt Grimm Sundancer. That's amazing. Oh, I see what you did there.
Right, yeah.
So it's so the people in the know will like kind of a little nod, like, oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Whereas like, so But if like there's a lot of people again want to be original, so they'll bring something from the internet and say, I want to get this, and I want it right here on my body, and that's exactly how I want it. Except they bring in a picture from the internet where hundreds, if not thousands, of people have the exact same tattoo.
Right. Yeah.
So because they're the only person in their friend circle that has this particular tattoo, they're a unique little snowflake, one-of-a-kind person that it's the only one that they know that has this tattoo. Even though that in their own city, there might be another 20, 30, 100 people.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of an interesting kind of thing that we have tons of tattoo designs on the walls at the shop. And people will come in and it's like, well, I don't want that because everybody gets that. It's like, no, nobody gets that anymore. We have this computer in our pocket that where we can look up any image in the world, and they pick the same 6, Doug fir trees or the shape of Oregon with a heart in it, or there's nothing wrong with that idea. It's like I always say it's like pumpkin spice latte. We always joke about it when it comes, but damn, is it good?
Yeah, there's something good about it. Everybody wants it.
Yeah, right? Like apparently UGG boots are super comfortable, because all these people wear them, So it's easy to joke about, but
right.
It's also
there must be something to it.
There's something to it, So it's like it's sometimes it's like we get burnout on things when we hear that same damn Mariah Carey Christmas song over and over and over, and we're like, no more.
No, yeah, right.
And
you know what you're talking about with the different, like, referencing classics or like how things will kind of become popular. Something that reminds me of like guitar pedal building, because every once in a while someone will come out of left field and they'll like claim to have done something that no one's ever done before. You've never seen it, and I'm sitting here kind of thinking like, oh, you just reinvented the last like 70 years of electrical engineering, for example.
Yeah.
And this is something I talked with your coworker Gabby about quite a few times, about how sometimes with like the professions that you do or I do, it's almost like you really feel connected into paying tribute to all these greats that have come before you. It's
Sure.
almost like egotistical to think that you wouldn't learn something from
very much so.
these like titans of the industry.
Yeah, and just the way that Tony Iommi created his sound, and people are trying to recreate that sound, and then instead of using like the 3 pedals or whatever systems that he went through, you can do it with 1 or 2 pedals.
Yeah, totally.
So that's got to be like, it's not reinventing anything, except you maybe like find a more efficient way to do it.
Definitely.
And so it's like, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. And it's obviously if you're not using like the same circuit pattern or whatever, and just, you came up with your own thing. It's not like you're repackaging someone else's thing and then just saying, nope, this is mine.
Yeah, it's still your work, and you're putting like your artistic take on things.
Yeah.
So down at the shop, you work at the Parlor.
Yeah, the Parlor.
The Parlor in Eugene, Oregon.
Yes.
Which is on 11th and Willamette Street, correct?
Yes, 1097 Willamette.
So, Jimmy, for folks that are listening right now and they're kind of hearing everything you're talking about, tattoos and stuff, and want to check out more of what you do at the Parlor in Eugene and your artwork, where could they check you out, like on Instagram, for example?
You can find me on Instagram at JimmyTron71.
So that's at JimmyTron71. I'll leave a link in the description of this podcast so everybody can go check out what Jimmy's doing.
Thank you.
So I know at the Parlor you have, well, this is going to be tomorrow, the Friday the 13th Tattoo Marathon. So maybe a lot of folks might not know about this, but kind of a traditional thing is like Friday the 13th. It's always like this big tattoo party. Yeah.
Yeah. With like have a bunch of like spooky tattoos and wide range of images and price points, and it's just a silly party. Just get tons of people coming out and getting fun, crazy tattoos that are just a little bit different than you might like. Sometimes there might be cool images like, oh, I was meant to get that tattoo, and so it's just a great opportunity to do it.
So what are these events like? Because this is going to be happening from 11 in the morning till midnight. So
that's the idea.
So this is a 13-hour
yes, marathon. Yes. We just start bright and early, and for us, and then Just folks will come in and will first come, first serve, and you pick the design you want from the sheets. We have multiple sheets of images, and then we'll sometimes take names and numbers for folks that they can go get lunch if the line is too long.
Okay, yeah, because I heard sometimes it's around the block.
Yeah, sometimes like if we don't, then yeah, the line can go a ways, and it's kind of nice the fact that we're doing it till midnight. We can usually accommodate most people that way. Last time in September, it got a little nuts where we didn't stop until like 2 a.m. So we kind of overshot the 13-hour thing.
Wow.
So hopefully we won't be that crazy.
So this makes me think about there's like all these like little like classic things that people want to know about tattoo shops or like don't really understand, or they feel like it's taboo to even like ask. On these Friday the 13th events specifically, you're working, basically people walk in and there's flash on the wall.
Yeah, we'll have some boards or sheets with specific images that you can choose from. Everything else, we're not going to be working on sleeves or back pieces or
custom designs,
custom images. Yeah,
any other day, folks can come in for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes folks kind of feel it's taboo to walk into a tattoo shop and then look at the wall and be like, I want that skull with the bat wings. So can you like touch on that? Because I think a lot of folks maybe feel like they're not getting something original when a lot of times like grabbing what's on the wall is actually a really cool and fun thing to do.
Yeah, it was tradition for years and years, 100 some odd years, to have tons of designs that you can choose from. And back in the day, you would have these, what they call acetate stencils, this plastic that the image would be carved into, and then they'd only have like maybe 2 sizes or 3 sizes of that one image if they've etched that into it, like a clipper ship or an anchor or an eagle. And they would apply that with Vaseline and powder, and it would be a very impermanent stencil, because if you wipe the Vaseline, gone. So the designs had to be simple and not very ornate and be able to be done relatively quickly, especially if you're near a military base.
Right.
Because you have a line of sailors, Marines, or whatever out the door. You want to get their money before they spend it on women and booze. So
yeah,
you want a simple, quick design. Nowadays, since the 80s, 90s, and now we have very good stencil machines. We have a lot more tools at our disposal. We have more artists that come from art school or more graphic art, graffiti art backgrounds, and it's challenged the imagery, what we can get, and it's pushed it from not just you're limited to what's on the walls to what do you want. And so we have more people bringing designs in, and because it's their idea rather than coming in like, oh, I want that. So when I got started, we'd had Flash, and there's a famous brand called Cherry Creek, and they'd have barbed wire armbands, Native American designs, tribal designs, the tramp stamp era, you know, and sometimes we do it exactly as was on the wall, if that's what they wanted, or sometimes we change the lower back design with a different butterfly and maybe change the flowers on that flower armband. So we was like, there's still that option to like, well, instead of having this skull with a cowboy hat, how about we have a skull with a sailor hat? How about we have a skull with a Viking hat? So we can keep that same basic idea, but maybe tweak it out a little bit.
It's okay to ask for this kind of stuff.
Very much so.
So I think a lot of customers, especially folks that haven't been to a tattoo shop, I'm sure you can relate.
Oh, yeah.
The feeling that you had when you walked into Jim Hawk's shop for the first time, I'm sure it was a little...
Well, for me, like I was, I think, 16 or 17, hanging out with my buddy Zach, and we decided to get our ears pierced because he had the piercing gun, and so got my ear pierced, and it was terrifying because here I am, this nerdy kid, didn't know any better, and here's like this shop with a Harley Davidson in the middle of it, guys with hair down their belt, sleeved out, and just, it was terrifying. This is not my world. And so you get that anxiety, that heightened, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Yeah, am I going to get beat up or whatever? And so that there's that fear that I don't think exists in a lot of tattoo shops any longer.
Yeah, the shop you described, I don't think there is that's not as much the standard anymore as it
not
used
anymore.
to be.
Back in the day, Rusty Savage in Eugene, Springfield was like that. He was the old school biker type, that world has evolved and changed. They still exist. Jim Hawk is still tattooing in Galesburg, Illinois. The Hawk one and only Hawk, I think, on Instagram. But he's got more of like a tattoo museum at the entrance of the shop, and he's got some new people working for him. But there's a lot of shops that are just a lot more friendly, almost like, it's just like they try to make it as non-threatening as possible.
Right.
There's shops where it's like, you don't know if you're going into a nail salon or whatever,
Yeah.
And I think that's great because you have a lot of women that will be more comfortable with a female tattooer or someone with more of a gentle approach rather than the rough and tumble, like, what do you want?
Exactly, yeah, because I think that's what a lot of people imagine when they're thinking of these kind of things. So it's really sounding like that. I mean, especially with your background, you're saying that you were like really into comic books and you kind of felt like kind of nerdy going into these places, that it's okay. Just come on in, meet the people. And it seems like, today it seems like it's pretty easy to find someone that you click with to sit down and start talking about what you want.
Very much so. It's kind of gotten so specialized that there's so many different types of tattooers, and then just the way pop culture changes. A few years back, the big image was the infinity knot exploding into birds floating off.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so there's always trends that come and go. And right now, there's more tattooers tattooing now than any time ever. There's so much art out there. Imagery and information is being shared more than ever before. And so it's opened things up to where people are doing imagery that is like beyond what the old school guys would even consider. And some of them, like if they had some of the machines that we're using nowadays, or the stencil makers, or just the background, some of them might have tried to do some of this crazy stuff. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing because we see a lot of like geometric stuff is really popular nowadays. Yeah. And then sometimes a lot of colorful stuff with no outline. A few years ago, it was watercolor tattoos with no black. And so it's gotten to a point where a lot of the clients are dictating the culture rather than the tattooers. Whereas there's
really interesting.
There's a lot of tattooers, and in the tattoo community where you have the Japanese guy, you have the traditional Americana guy, you have the black and gray kind of Los Angeles black and gray kind of style, and then so and we still have that. And then we have some people that are like, all over the place. They can do anything that you ask them to. Then you have the people that only do color portraits, and so it's like you can get whatever you want. And the thing is, there's certain types of tattoos that may not age well, because of its foreign substance in our skin, and black is always going to be good on the skin. But then once we get into pale colors like whites or flesh tones or pinks and yellows, our bodies absorb it and change its tones, especially as layers of skin grow over the layers of pigment. So sometimes we will try to educate folks like, well, this may not be the longest lasting tattoo. I'll make it look great. It'll look great for 10 years, but then after that, it's going to fall off. And I think a lot of people come from a consumer point of view where, well, I want that shirt. I'm going to buy that shirt. I want these shoes. I'm going to buy those shoes. They don't think of it, they're going to wear that shirt forever.
Right.
They don't think these shoes are going to wear forever, this hairstyle. So I think a lot of people have a temporary mindset with a permanent medium. And
gotcha.
And so And it's kind of interesting being in this business for so long and then seeing so much change where we have kids, 18-year-old kids coming in wanting hand or face tattoos. And for me, that's a big no-no. He's like, no, that's weird, man. You don't start with, it's like wearing mittens and a scarf and nothing else. It's kind of weird, but it's just the way trends are. And if I don't do it, someone else will do it. So, but then I don't feel right just doing someone's first tattoo on their face, you know, even though that's their, you know, they got to live with the consequences, you know. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to try to evolve with the times as trends come and go. And then what's going to happen when the SoundCloud rapper thing kind of fades out and the next new thing happens and face tattoos are kind of janky, you know? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 5-10 years and see what the next trend is.
So our face tattoo is going to be the new tramp stamp? Is that the...
Oh, of course. Everything comes and goes, you know? Because, I mean, we joke about tramp stamps and tribal stuff. And but then, like...
But at the time, that stuff was hot.
Is hot shit, you know? Like I'd like to thank George Clooney for making me a bunch of money from his movie From Dusk to Dawn. You know, he had this, his character had the tattoo going from his neck to his wrist of the tribal imagery.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we get a lot of guys that just really dug that. And so, like, I want to look like that. It's like, okay, let's draw some tribal. And it was always a blast. And it looks cool. It looks dynamic against the skin.
Yeah,
like heavy black work against the pale skin. Or whatever skin color you have, you know. So it just, tribal looks dope. But then just some people, because it's not, you know, Asian Dragon, or it's not something that they'd rather do, you know, they feel like their talents are being squandered, you know. And the thing I always go back to, I read a quote from Ed Hardy, old tattooer, not just the t-shirt guy, but he said that basically I'm a taxi driver. My job is to take them from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I'm not here to take them on the scenic route unless they pay me to go on the scenic route. If they tell me they want a Polynesian leg sleeve with a big snake going in and out of the Polynesian tribal, then we can go on that journey together. But they tell me they want a heart with a banner, I'm going to do a heart and a banner. So it's... I think the intention behind a lot of tattooers or a lot of workers, you know, like, what are they trying to do with their thing? You know, like, do people come to them because they're the celebrity tattooer, or are they just trying to buy a thing? I just want a thing. Just buy me, make a thing for me.
Right.
And so sometimes we have the opportunity to make that thing better. Like, okay, your expectations are at 60. I want to bring it up to 100. I want to outdo your expectations and give you something as good as I know how to make. And sometimes there's room for that, sometimes there's not.
Makes sense. Yeah. So before we wrap this up, Jimmy, I wanted to just, again, you got the big Friday the 13th event going on tomorrow. That's at The Parlor Tattoo. And what's the address again in Eugene, Oregon?
1097 Willamette Street.
And real quick, just can you just describe again what the last one was like? Because it sounded like it's a real happening thing, 13-hour long tattoo session, a bunch of people in the shop having fun.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of tattoos, imagery. Like we'll probably have about 5 or 6, if not more, sheets of flash. A bunch of people are trying to draw up new stuff for tomorrow.
Right.
So it's not the same stuff that we've done all over and over. But there are going to be a lot of classic ideas that we had.
But a bunch of new previous times. Yes, for tomorrow.
And so it's going to be just a good time doing rad tattoos.
And how many tattooers are going to be working tomorrow?
6 people full all day.
So, and then you mentioned before that, like, sometimes different tattooers will focus on kind of different styles and stuff. What kind of different folks are working at the parlor right now?
Damian Thompson has been there for a long time. He's been focusing on large-scale Japanese work, really amazing stuff through his filter, just powerful, bold, colorful. Etzel Leguizamon and Justin Ryan have both been doing a lot of neat stuff, some of the geometric kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But both are very crisp and precise, and Justin has been focusing on his geometric and stipple kind of shading and just
really clean work.
Very clean, very precise. You will know a Justin Ryan tattoo when you see it.
Definitely.
As well as Etzel. Etzel's, I think, got a little more variety, and some of the designs he likes to do. He tries not to get pigeonholed in too much. Jerry Wagner has been there forever and ever, off and on. He's a very versatile tattooer. He'll do just about everything that you want except for hands. He doesn't like to do hands or necks.
Gotcha.
But and Gabriella Ladron Paz, I was trying to remember all her names, but she's our workhorse and does everything. Comes from more of a traditional Americana approach, but she's been really growing so much in the last few years that she's been with us, and just really pushing herself, and is doing really great work. And then I do some stuff there too.
And what kind of stuff do you usually focus on? I know you do a lot of different things, but what's like your favorite stuff to focus on?
I don't even know. It's again, it's all what the client brings in, and a lot of times
really important, I think.
I've been doing a lot of random sleeves and back pieces, and
you do some nice portraits too.
I do like black and gray portraits. I just try to like find if there's I've somehow developed a clientele that want things that I know how to make. And
that's got to feel good.
It's a very good feeling, especially, after so long, and as things change and evolve, and like there's trends that come and go, and I've somehow still found a little pocket, even if I'm not the busiest all the time, I still have people coming through off and on, and I'm not on the streets yet. So I just think, glob for, that I've still be able to like serve my clientele as best I can. And so I like detail work. I like texture and detail, like color, black and gray. So I try to keep it versatile.
What's the favorite tattoo that you've ever? Is there one tattoo that sticks out as like being like your favorite that you've done on someone?
Oh gosh, I
or
don't know,
the
because,
worst. Oh, that might be.
The worst isn't. It's not always the tattoo itself. It's just the experience.
Interaction, I bet. Yeah, because something that I overlooked a lot. I was like about what like your profession is like. I thought about the art and the tattooing and all that stuff. And then sometimes I'm down at the shop and watching y'all work. It hits me of how much it's like a customer service job and interacting with people.
Very much so.
And how that could be like the hardest part. Is drawing a beautiful portrait's hard enough, but on a wiggling person.
Yes. Yeah. It's always, just the interpersonal situations, because, I tend to try to have really good bedside manner, especially with big pieces, because we're in this for the long haul, and you get a lot of the walk-in type of thing where sometimes slap on an image, we start working, all of a sudden all that anxiety and anticipation kicks in. Yeah. And some people might get a little lightheaded or sweaty palms, mom spaghetti or something. And so, it's trying to get over that anticipation and not let someone freak out, get lightheaded, give them some Jolly Ranchers or something.
How come I never get offered those? Sometimes
they're right there. Just grab them.
Well, they're at Jerry's station. So
they're my station. It's mine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm the only one that buys candy for our clients.
I didn't know that.
Actually, I got to go get some for tomorrow.
Sounds good. So again, that's 11 a.m. till midnight.
Yeah.
13 hours.
Yes.
Is it 6 artists?
Six artists all day long.
So folks can come down if they're in the Eugene area and come hang with you and everybody else.
Yes.
13 hours of tattooing. I'm going to try to sneak in myself.
Yeah, please do.
Jimmy, thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Hey, thanks for having me over. Appreciate it.
So for folks that are wanting to check out more of what Jimmy does, they can look Jimmy up on Instagram at JimmyTron71. I'll leave a link in the bio. Of course, the big Friday the 13th tattoo event is going on at the Parlor, which is in downtown Eugene, Oregon. Going to leave links to info for all of that for anyone in the neighborhood. And I hope that everyone listening enjoyed listening to someone who's worked for a very long time pursuing their passion and are working in a tattoo profession today. I'm Jason Johnson with Fuzzlord Effects, and you've been listening to the Fuzz Life podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. All right, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed this week's episode of the Fuzz Life podcast. Again, we were talking to Jimmy Singleton, who's a very talented tattoo artist in Eugene, Oregon, that works at the Parlor Tattoo. Again, you can check him out on Instagram at JimmyTron71. I'll leave a link in the description. As always, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the podcast, left a rating, or wrote a little review. Those are all really cool things that you can do to support the podcast without spending any money. Again, I'm Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you can keep up with me on a daily on the Instagram page at Fuzzlord Effects. Check out what Fuzzlord is up to at fuzzlordeffects.com or on the YouTube channel where all of these podcasts are also available. And it gives us somewhere that we can comment and talk back and forth to each other on the podcast. So until next time, I look forward to talking to you again next week and hope you are all having a good week.